First thing that you want to do, if your wheel is wet and you put a clay ball in there, it's going to slide everywhere. So what you want to do is get your clay that's already worked and wedged in a nice ball, take it and kind of slide it back and forth and it'll suction on there. Otherwise you can be chasing this clay all around the wheel. So then you want to set your speed. You don't want to be going this fast, you also don't want to be going really slow, somewhere in between. About right there. And once you've done that, go ahead and take your foot off the pedal. Get your knees, you want your knees roughly in line with the clay. Faster. First you're going to wet the clay. Now if you're right-handed, your left hand is your centering hand. Right hand's going to grab your thumb. And you're going to kind of push down at an angle. You grab your thumb here. Now once you see and feel it on the center, just slowly back away. The clay is a mirror of what your hands are doing. So if your hands are moving, the clay is going to move. You want your forearms here, right on your legs, you're going to be right over the clay. Let your body do most of the work. Now for opening, after each step you want to wet the clay, make sure the clay is nice and shiny. Have your left hand here, you want this part of your hand about right here. 2 fingers right here. And just let it find center for you. Once you do that, you're just slowly going to push down. Don't go all the way down. Leave a little clay there. Now, my finger is touching the side of the clay, so I'm going down. So I'm kind of going down at this angle. Once you've done that, stop the wheel. Take your needle tool, push it in all the way to the bat, pull it out, and there's our depth. Right there. Set your speed again. Get the clay nice and shiny. Go right back to that position there. Water. What we're going to do is we're going to bend this knuckle a little bit and we're going to drag that finger across the floor. Now you want to make sure that you drag at a nice level spacing. Just like that. Now we've made the floor of our pot. Take your left thumb here, put your fingers on the wheel head, and you want to smooth that out. Really compress that clay against the wheel, less chance of cracking. So now what we have, so we have a flat floor and we have a little donut there. Just a little bit faster. After each step, wet the clay. Now you don't want a lake of water in there, you just want enough. With these 2 fingers here, make sure your fingernails are nice and clipped. You're going to put them where the floor and the wall meet. You're going to put your thumb down here, just like that, if you're picking up a 6-pack. This hand can go right next to the thumb. What you're going to do is you're going to squeeze here and you're going to guide with this hand. So squeeze and guide. And as you're squeezing that clay, you want to kind of push it towards the center so you make kind of like a volcano. So gently squeeze and guide. Bring it up about 2 inches or so. As you get to the very top, just gently let go. And that's all you need to do for your first pull. You can see how this diameter is slightly smaller than the footprint of the bottom. That's what we want. Now for the second pull, notice how the clay is always shiny. Don't want a lake of water in there. We don't have that nice donut, so we have to create something. So with the inside hand, I'm going to put my thumb here as resistance, and I'm going to kind of push with these 2 fingers right where the floor and the wall meet. I'm going to make a little bump right there. Now with this hand, I'm going to get underneath that bump. This hand feeds the bump, and we're just going to gently lift that ring up. And as I get to the very top, just gently let go. Now if you have a little wobble here, pinch the clay gently with this hand, just make contact and just kind of compress that. Even it out. Now I can always bring this clay out further, but it's really hard to kind of bring it back in there, so I always want this lip to be slightly smaller than the bottom. Now we're going to do this one more time. So you push that bump out, get underneath it. My fingertips right here are what's creating that bump. I have my thumb here as resistance. I'm just lifting that up. As I get to the very top, I gently let go. There's a little wobble in that lip. You also don't want your lip to be too sharp because it's going to create some problem when trimming and glazing. I'm going to gently have my fingers right here, these 3 fingers on the side. I'm going to move my finger right here. I'm going to make kind of an OK sign. Make contact, but don't squeeze the clay. Take your needle tool, put it right where the corner of your cuticle is. And you have plenty of time here. When you feel it break and touch your finger, just gently lift up. Now we've leveled that out. Now, usually it takes about 3 pulls to get the clay nice and even. And for my 3rd pull, I can get some shape to this. So we're going to make a mug here. So I'm going to kind of just push the clay out here at the bottom. Maybe I bring it up here. Maybe I want a little ring right here. I'm going to give this cup just a little character. I'm going to flare out the lip just a little bit, make it easier to drink. Make sure your lip is nice and rounded. That's where your lips are going to touch the vessel. Come in here with what's called a shaping tool. Wet it first. Notice how I have my wrists are always on the splash pan. I'm going to come in here, use the tip, and get rid of this little extra clay here. It'll save me some time in trimming. Now I'm going to get rid of that little extra clay there. Push this out just a little bit. Any standing water in the bottom, take your sponge. Usually I'll hold it in my hand like this. I'll press against it, kind of working against the grain. Get rid of any extra water. I'm going to call that good. All right, so at the end of the class you might have several cups. Your last one's going to be really wet, and your goal is to keep your cup in the same shape as it was on the wheel, because you don't want to do any kind of cleanup after. Easiest thing is to get a wear board. You can see here, this already has some nice dust on there. Keep that dust on there. Get a liberal amount of water on there. Now, you're going to get your piece that we just drew. You're going to put a little puddle of water behind it. Take your wire tool, wind it up. You're going to put your thumb on the wire. Sometimes I'll put it at the edge here so I can put my hip against it. You're going to pull that water through the bottom. Usually it takes a couple pulls. Now if it gets stuck on there, no big deal. Hold your one thumb here and wind it back. Now you want a nice bit of water here. You're going to take it here. Take your hand, kind of move it up like this. Kind of like you're doing the Spock thing. And you're going to slide it right on there. And if you have several, you can slide it, you know, one here, one there, and so on. This piece is all evened out now. Now trimming takes a little while. I'm going to show you a method called tap to center. You want to make sure that your bat is nice and dry and clean. You want to make sure that your lip is nice and level. So make sure you level out your lips before you take them off the wheel, after you throw them. I'm going to put this over here. Now if this is throwing speed, right here, centering speed will be 1 click lower. Oh, right there. So we're going to put this in center roughly. You can see this not on center, so if this is a record, it's going to, you can tell when a record's not on. It's hitting one area. I'm going to let my fingers just kind of rest on there. I'm not pressing down. Now my hands, these 3 fingers are the ones that are going to push this to center, and where I'm going to hit is right down at that lip. Now if your piece is too wet, you're going to gum up this lip and it's also going to distort. If it's too dry, it slides out of center really easily. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to time it, I'm just going to start hitting it. And as I get closer, less of a hit. And you'll see it. Where I'm looking is not necessarily right here, because this is where we took it off the wheel and it's a little bit off. I'm looking about right here, about an inch or so down. So, right there. Now you have to hit this enough to get it moving. And usually what students do is as they get closer, they're still hitting it to the same strength as when they started. So if it's off right here, a little tap, as I get closer, right there. Your first try is going to take you about 20 minutes, and you're going to throw it in the wheel. You're going to ruin a lot of cups. That's just the way it is. Now you're going to roll a nice fat coil here. You don't want clay that's too stiff. You also don't want it too wet. Put your hand here. Now if you can, put your thumb down on the wheel head to keep this from moving. I'm going to put this right up against the lip. Now I'm not going to push in because I can distort my lip. All I'm going to do is just push down and snug it up. Working opposites. And I got this nice and secure. Okay, so now we're going to trim a foot. So if this is throwing speed and that was centering speed, one click above that is going to be trimming speed. You want to use lots of speed. That way you don't have to use a lot of pressure. So I'll put my index finger of my left hand in here. My forearms are placed on my legs just like in throwing. Now I'm putting my finger here, but I'm not pressing down real hard. I'm creating a little U shaped here. And I'm going to take my trimming tool, I'm going to put that right to my thumb. I'm going to put my finger here. This way I have a lot of control. I can move it this way, this acts as a pivot point. I can turn it. And you really want the wheel to do the work. So the first thing I'm going to do is going to clean up this little edge here. Now the tool that I use the most is this flat one, and I trim right in that corner a lot because I can be very accurate. First of all, I'm just going to take care of this little extra clay down here. You can see how I rotated that on my thumb. Now I'm probably going to bring this foot into somewhere around here. So I'm going to start down here. I'm going to bring that clay in. Now you can see how it comes off in nice little bands. When it comes off in little strips like that, you know that the piece is nice and leather hard. If it comes off in filings, it's too dry. If it comes off in clumps and gets stuck on the end here, it's too wet. Now that I've kind of cleaned this up, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little corner right here and I'm going to turn it down and make a little groove. I'm going to get rid of this right here. You can use your fingers to kind of burnish those edges. Now, I'm going to work on the interior here. I'm going to start by creating a little line here. I'm going to take out that middle. Now when you're working in here, you got to use a lot of speed. You have to kind of catch that edge. If you press down hard, you can start warping that bottom. You can also tap it. The pitch is going to change the thinner you become. You'll get used to that noise and know how deep you're going. Come back here with my fingers to kind of burnish this edge. Now your foot, the thickness of your foot should match roughly the thickness of your lip. So you don't need a real burly foot. You also want to make sure that this center is below the edge, otherwise it's going to teeter. Go back in there and just burnish out my throwing lines. Call that good. So we're going to pull a handle for this cup here. Now the clay that you want to use, you want to make sure that it's not too wet, but it's probably a little wetter than what you'd like for throwing. You'll start by wedging that really well, forming it into a ball. Then we're going to roll one side of this, create a peg or a carrot. Now the trick to handle is to do most of your work here. After we get that into a carrot, just kind of flatten it out a little bit. Then I'm going to go over the sink and I'm going to pull a handle. Okay, so I found it's easiest just to pull a handle over the sink. That way you don't make a mess. Now what you're going to do is just wet the clay, and I'm going to use my thumb. I use the thumb all the way around here, and I'm going to work mainly this side and this side to hold it here. Now I'm going to even it out. And you have to think about how this handle is going to feel in your hands. You don't want those edges to get too thick. You also don't want them too thin. In my opinion, the handle that works the best is the one that kind of tapers, so it's a little thicker in the middle and thinner on the sides. You can even it out by just kind of holding your hand here and pulling straight down. But as you're pulling this handle, you want to make sure that you know what it looks like all the way around. So sometimes I'll switch hands. That way I keep it symmetrical. That's what it looks like. You don't want it too thick, you don't want it too thin. And you want more handle than you think you need. The reason why I start with a wedge is that I can hold on to this little chunk up here, and then I'm going to put it on the table. Okay, so we're going to score this first. Now you want to make sure your hands are nice and clean. If you just pulled your handle, make sure you wash your hands, dry them. I'm just going to dab a little water right here. I'm going to score into this. And dab a little more water. Working in cross hatches. I'm going to make sure you create a nice little slip and slurry right here. We'll do the same down here. Take a second to make sure that you're aligned. Now when you're trimming, you want to make sure that you wrap your cups each time you finish one, if you have several that you're doing. Because that clay, you don't want this to be dry. It should be the same consistency as trimming consistency, so it's leather hard. Okay. Now we have our handle here that we just pulled. What I'm going to do is my hands are nice and dry. I'm going to hold it right here. It's going to stick to my hands. That's what we want. Now where my finger is here, I'm going to cut this at an angle. And you have plenty of time, so you don't have to cut it real quickly. You see that slight angle and see how it sticks to my hands? Now I'm going to get my cup here. Switch my hands here. Now I'm going to put this right up to it. You don't need to push hard. Make sure you got a nice good joint on there. Make sure it's going to be symmetrical. Now I'm going to take my cup, turn it sideways, and naturally we'll create that shape. Make sure that you're on straight. I take my thumb, just kind of apply a little pressure here. I'm going to pinch this little end off here. A little water in here to kind of clean this up. And you have a nice two-finger cup. Now, there's going to be a little cleanup around here. Give it some time. Let it stiffen up a little bit, and you can come back in here with your rib or a needle tool and kind of clean up those seams. There's not a whole lot of cleanup that's going to occur. Trick to handle is to handle it as little as possible, the more natural it's going to look.